What if I told you that the biggest lie you've ever believed wasn't told by your parents, your teachers, your boss, or even your enemies? It was told by one voice, your own, every day. Thousands of thoughts pass through your mind, but only a handful shape your future. The strange part is that most people never choose those thoughts. They simply inherit them. They repeat the same mental script until it becomes their identity. I'm not good enough. I always fail. People don't respect me. Nothing ever works out. Now imagine replacing that script for just 3 days. Not 3 months. Not 30 days. Just 3. Because your brain doesn't wait for reality to change before it changes your behavior. It changes the moment it believes a different story. And once your behavior changes, people begin reacting to you differently. Appear that we're always there, but invisible to the old version of you. Today, you're going to learn exactly how to speak to yourself in a way that rewires your decisions, your confidence, and the way the world responds to you. But there's one rule. You can't just listen. You have to test it. For the next 3 days, become the narrator of your own mind instead of its prisoner. Let's begin. There is a conversation happening inside your head every waking moment. Most people think of it as background noise. They assume thoughts simply appear and they react to them as though they were fact. But your internal dialogue is doing something far more important than commenting on your life. It is quietly deciding who you become. Think about someone who constantly tells themselves they are unlucky. Every inconvenience becomes proof. They miss one opportunity, and immediately their mind says, "See? This always happens to me." They are no longer observing reality. They are filtering reality through a story they have repeated so many times that it feels objective. The mind is incredibly efficient. It loves patterns because patterns reduce effort. Once it believes something is true, it starts collecting evidence to support that belief while ignoring evidence that contradicts it. This is why two people can experience the same event and walk away with completely different conclusions. One person sees rejection as evidence that they aren't good enough. Another sees rejection as information, a lesson, a temporary obstacle. The event is identical. The internal narration is not. Most people spend years trying to change their circumstances without ever changing the voice interpreting those circumstances. They search for confidence in promotions, relationships, compliments, expensive clothes, or achievements. But confidence that depends on external validation is fragile. The moment the validation disappears, so does the confidence. Real confidence begins much earlier. It begins with the private conversations that no one else hears. Imagine following yourself around all day, listening to every sentence you say inside your own mind. Would you feel encouraged, or would you feel criticized? Many people unknowingly speak to themselves with a level of cruelty they would never direct toward another human being. They make one mistake and immediately think, "I'm so stupid." They hesitate during a conversation and conclude, "Everyone thinks I'm awkward." They fail once and decide, "I'm just not capable." The brain doesn't distinguish very well between words spoken aloud and words repeated internally. Repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates belief. Belief influences action. And action creates results. This is why changing your self-talk is not positive thinking. It is strategic thinking. Notice the difference between these two statements. I hope I don't embarrass myself. I'll handle whatever happens. The first statement places your attention on failure before anything has even occurred. Your body begins preparing for danger. Your shoulders tighten. Your breathing changes. Your confidence shrinks. The second statement doesn't guarantee success. It guarantees resilience. And resilience is far more powerful. People who appear mentally strong are rarely free from doubt. They have simply learned not to negotiate with every fearful thought that appears. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" they ask, "If I fail, what will I learn?" That small shift changes everything. Now, here's your first challenge. For the next 3 days, every time you catch yourself saying something negative about yourself, stop immediately. Don't argue with the thought. Omspit, if your mind says, "I'm terrible at this," respond with, "I'm still learning this." If it says, "I always mess things up," replace it with, "I'm improving every time I practice." Notice something important. These replacements are believable. Your brain resists obvious exaggerations. If you tell yourself, "I'm the greatest person alive," your mind may reject it instantly. But if you tell yourself, "I'm becoming more capable every day," your mind has room to accept it. The goal isn't to deceive yourself. The goal is to stop deceiving yourself in the opposite direction. Because negative self-talk is just as unrealistic as blind optimism. It is simply repeated more often. Think about the people you admire. They don't possess perfect lives. They possess useful internal dialogue. When pressure rises, they don't collapse into self-criticism. They become intentional with the words they choose. Eventually, those words become habits. Those habits become behavior. That behavior becomes identity. And identity shapes destiny. The voice inside your head is either building your future or quietly dismantling it. Every sentence is a vote. Every repetition strengthens one version of you while weakening another. The question is no longer whether you talk to yourself. The question is who that voice is creating. Most people use self-talk like a news reporter. "I feel nervous. I'm bad at public speaking. I can't focus. I'm not disciplined." Notice what these statements have in common. They describe the present as though it were permanent. Description feels harmless, but repeated often enough, it becomes identity. Imagine a movie director standing on a film set. If an actor forgets a line, the director doesn't announce, "Well, I guess this movie is ruined." The director gives direction. "Try that scene again. Slow down. Look at the other character. Use more confidence." Direction creates improvement. Description creates stagnation. Your mind works the same way. Instead of narrating your weaknesses, begin directing your next action. Instead of, "I'm overwhelmed," say, "What's the next small step?" Instead of, "I'm lazy," say, "Start for 5 minutes." Instead of, "I'll never figure this out," say, "What's one thing I can understand today?" These subtle shifts transform your brain from an emotional commentator into a problem-solving system. This matters because emotions are temporary. Instructions are actionable. Imagine waking up tomorrow and facing a difficult task. Your old script says, "This is going to be exhausting." Your new script says, "Start before you're ready." One creates hesitation. The other creates movement. And movement changes emotion far more often than emotion creates movement. Waiting until you feel motivated is one of the biggest mental traps people fall into. Motivation is unreliable. Direction is dependable. Elite performers in every field understand this principle. They don't wake up every day overflowing with inspiration. They have moments of doubt, fatigue, frustration, and uncertainty like everyone else. The difference is that they don't ask their emotions for permission to begin. They give themselves instructions. Stand up. Take the first step. Finish this paragraph. Make the call. Lift the weight. Practice one more repetition. Their internal dialogue sounds less like a victim describing circumstances and more like a leader directing action. You can develop the same habit. The next time your mind begins labeling who you are, interrupt it with a question. What should I do next? That question instantly shifts attention from identity to action. Action creates evidence. Evidence reshapes identity. Suppose you want to become more confident in conversations. Don't keep saying, I'm socially awkward. Instead, direct yourself. Ask one good question, maintain eye contact, slow your breathings, smile before you speak. Those instructions are measurable, achievable, repeatable. After enough repetitions, your brain no longer sees you as someone trying to become confident. It begins accepting confidence as part of who you are because you've accumulated evidence through action. This is how identity truly changes, not through declarations, through repeated proof. For the next 3 days, pay close attention to every label you give yourself. Each time you hear yourself saying, I am, pause. Ask yourself, is this describing my past or directing my future? If it only describes yesterday, replace it with an instruction that shapes tomorrow, because your future is not built by the labels you repeat. It is built by the directions you consistently follow. And once your inner voice becomes a coach instead of a critic, you'll notice something remarkable. The world doesn't change overnight, but your responses do. Your posture changes. Your decisions become faster. Your presence becomes calmer. People begin sensing confidence before you say a single word, not because you've become someone else, but because you've finally started speaking to yourself like the person you were capable of becoming all along. Now that you've seen how your inner dialogue shapes your identity, it's time to test it, not in theory, in real life. For the next 3 days, you are going to run an experiment on your own mind. Most people spend years trying to change themselves through motivation. They watch videos, read books, buy planners, and promise themselves that tomorrow will be different. But when tomorrow arrives, the same habits return because the voice inside their head never changed. This challenge is different. You're not trying to become a different person overnight. You're becoming a different narrator. Here's the first rule. For 3 days, you are not allowed to insult yourself. That means no saying, I'm an idiot. No saying, I'm so lazy. No saying, I always ruin everything. Even if you make a mistake, and you don't attack your identity, you correct your behavior. Imagine you're teaching a child to ride a bicycle. If they fall, you don't tell them they're a failure. You help them get back up, adjust their balance, and try again. Yet, adults often treat themselves with far less patience. The moment something goes wrong, they launch an internal attack. That attack doesn't create discipline. It creates hesitation. Your brain begins associating effort with emotional punishment. Eventually, it avoids trying altogether. For the next 3 days, your job is to interrupt that cycle. Every mistake becomes information. Every setback becomes feedback. Every uncomfortable moment becomes practice. The second rule is even more important. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you read a message, before someone else's opinions enter your mind, you are going to say 3 sentences slowly, with intention, not because they are magical, because repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity builds belief. Say, I can handle difficult situations. I improve through action. My thoughts work for me, not against me. Notice what these statements do. They don't promise perfection. They promise capability. That distinction matters. When people rely on unrealistic affirmations, they often become discouraged because reality doesn't immediately match the words. But capability is different. You don't need to know exactly how everything will work out. You only need confidence that you can respond intelligently to whatever happens. That's how resilient people think. The third rule happens throughout the day. Whenever something stressful occurs, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask, "What response would make me proud of myself?" Think about that question. It immediately shifts your attention away from blame and toward responsibility. Suppose someone criticizes you unfairly. Your old inner voice says, "They embarrassed me. I need to defend myself. I'll never forget this." Your new voice pauses. "What response would make me respect myself tomorrow?" Sometimes the answer is speaking calmly. Sometimes it's walking away. Sometimes it's asking a thoughtful question. Sometimes it's saying nothing at all. Strength isn't measured by how quickly you react. It's measured by how intentionally you choose your response. Now let's talk about something most people never notice. Your environment constantly feeds your internal dialogue. The people you spend time with, the content you consume, the conversations you repeat. If you spend hours every day surrounded by negativity, comparison, outrage, and fear, don't be surprised when those voices begin speaking through you. Protect your mental environment as carefully as you protect your physical health. Choose books that challenge you. Listen to conversations that inspire thoughtful action. Spend time with people who discuss solutions more often than excuses. Because eventually the voices around you become the voice within you. There's another exercise I want you to try tonight. Before going to sleep, ask yourself only one question. What did I do today that proves I'm becoming stronger? Not, what did I do wrong? Not, what should I have done better? Simply ask. What evidence did I create today? Maybe you stayed calm during an argument. Maybe you finished a task you had been avoiding. Maybe you admitted a mistake without making excuses. Maybe you simply caught one negative thought before it took control. That counts. Identity isn't built from giant breakthroughs. It's built from repeated evidence. And after 3 days of collecting different evidence, something interesting begins to happen. Your brain stops searching for reasons you're incapable. It starts searching for proof that you're growing. That subtle shift changes your decisions in ways you won't even notice at first. You'll volunteer for opportunities instead of avoiding them. You'll recover from mistakes faster. You'll speak with slightly more certainty. You'll hesitate a little less. These aren't dramatic transformations. They're quiet ones. But quiet transformations often become permanent because they're rooted in identity, not excitement. The 3-day challenge isn't the finish line. It's proof that your inner voice has always been trainable. You were never trapped. You were simply practicing a script you didn't realize you had memorized. Now you're writing a new one. Your brain is always answering questions. Whether you realize it or not, ask yourself, why am I such a failure? And your mind immediately begins searching through years of memories to produce evidence. It doesn't stop to ask whether the question is fair. It simply answers it. Ask, why does nobody respect me? Your brain becomes a detective. It gathers every awkward conversation, every disagreement, every moment of rejection. Within seconds, you've built an emotional case against yourself, not because it's objectively true, because your question demanded an answer. This is one of the most overlooked psychological habits in everyday life. People don't just suffer from negative thoughts. They suffer from negative questions. Now imagine replacing those questions instead of, why can't I do this? Ask, what skill am I missing? Instead of, why does this always happen to me? Ask, what pattern can I change? Instead of, what's wrong with me? Ask, what would the strongest version of me do next? Notice the difference. The first set traps your attention in identity. The second set directs your attention toward growth. Your brain cannot help but begin searching for useful answers. This is why high performers often appear unusually calm under pressure. When a problem appears, they don't waste energy asking emotionally satisfying questions. They ask productive ones. Imagine your plans suddenly fall apart. Most people instantly think, why today? Why me? This always happens. None of those questions improve the situation. Now imagine asking, what still remains under my control? Immediately, your posture changes. Your breathing slows. Your attention shifts from chaos to choice. Control may be smaller than you hoped, but it still exists, and that's where strength begins. There's another question that can transform the way you speak to yourself. Whenever fear appears, ask, what am I assuming? Fear often disguises assumptions as certainty. You assume people will judge you. You assume you'll fail. You assume one mistake will define your future. But assumptions are not facts. Most never become reality. When you expose them, they lose much of their power. Here's another question worth repeating every morning. What kind of person do I want my future self to thank me for being today? Think about that carefully. Your future isn't created all at once. It's created through thousands of ordinary decisions. Every time you choose patience over anger, preparation over procrastination, learning over excuses, you're sending a gift to a version of yourself that hasn't arrived yet. People often imagine confidence as a feeling, but confidence is often the memory of promises you've kept to yourself. Every time you follow through on a commitment, your brain quietly records evidence. I can trust myself. That may be the most valuable sentence your mind can ever believe, because once self-trust grows, discipline becomes easier, courage becomes more natural, resilience becomes more automatic. Here's a challenge for the next conversation you have. Instead of worrying about how you're being perceived, ask yourself, how can I make this person feel understood? That single question removes enormous pressure. It shifts your attention away from self-consciousness and toward genuine curiosity. Ironically, people who focus less on themselves often appear far more confident because confidence isn't constant self-analysis. It's freedom from it. Finally, remember this. Every question you ask yourself is like handing your brain a flashlight. Whatever you point it toward becomes brighter. If you keep shining it onto fear, fear grows. If you shine it on possibility, possibility expands. If you shine it on action, action becomes easier. Your inner voice isn't just speaking, it's asking. And the quality of your life will often mirror the quality of the questions you repeatedly ask yourself. So choose those questions carefully, because your brain is already preparing an answer. Imagine meeting someone who follows you everywhere. They hear every thought you think. They believe every word you say. They build their confidence or lose it based entirely on your voice. Would you constantly tell that person they're weak, that they're behind, that they'll never succeed? Probably not. Yet many people do exactly that to themselves. The truth is that your inner voice isn't just commentary. It's leadership. Every sentence either builds trust or erodes it. Every repeated phrase becomes an instruction your brain quietly follows. Leadership doesn't mean pretending everything is easy. It means responding to difficulty with clarity instead of panic. When something goes wrong, replace judgment with guidance. Instead of saying, I blew it, say, what can I improve before the next attempt? Instead of, I'm not disciplined, say, what's one action I can complete in the next 5 minutes? Notice the difference. One statement ends the conversation. The other creates momentum. Your brain responds remarkably well to clear, specific instructions. Vague criticism creates confusion. Clear direction creates action. This is why coaches don't simply tell athletes to be better. They break performance into individual actions. Adjust your stance, keep your eyes up, follow through, recover quickly. You can coach yourself the same way. When your mind starts spiraling, don't try to silence every thought. Give your attention a job. Ask, what is the next useful action? What is under my control right now? What would calm confidence look like in this moment? Those questions pull your attention away from imagined disasters and back to reality. Another powerful habit is to separate who you are from what happened. You failed at something. That doesn't mean you're a failure. You made a poor decision. That doesn't mean you're incapable of making good ones. One event should never become your identity. Strong minds protect that boundary. They accept responsibility without surrendering self-respect. That's a skill worth practicing every day, because the more you trust your own guidance, the less you'll depend on constant approval from everyone else. 3 days may not sound like much. It won't magically erase years of habits. It won't remove every moment of doubt. But it will accomplish something incredibly important. It will prove that your inner dialogue is a choice more often than you realized. The first day, you'll catch yourself speaking negatively dozens of times. The second day, you'll interrupt those thoughts a little faster. By the third day, something subtle begins to happen. You'll pause before believing every critical thought. You'll notice that many of the stories you've repeated for years were never facts. They were simply familiar, and familiarity often disguises itself as truth. From that point forward, every day becomes an opportunity to reinforce a different identity, not by pretending to be someone you're not, but by becoming more intentional about the person you're creating. Think about the version of yourself you want to become 1 year from now. That person won't exist because of one motivational video. They'll exist because of thousands of quiet moments when they chose a better response, a better question, a better habit, a better sentence. That's how real change happens, not all at once. One's conversation at a time. And the most important conversation you'll ever have is the one no one else can hear. So beginning today, become aware of it. Listen carefully when that old voice says, you can't. Answer with, I'll learn, when it says, you're not ready. Answer with, I'll begin anyway, when it says, you've failed before. Answer with, I've also grown since then. Those responses may seem small, but repeated consistently, they reshape your decisions. Your decisions reshape your habits. Your habits reshape your identity, and your identity reshapes your future. Never underestimate the quiet power of the words you repeat to yourself. Because your mind is always listening, the only question is this: what story will it hear from you tomorrow morning? Conclusion: if this message challenged the way you think, don't let it end here. Try the 3-day experiment. For the next 72 hours, become aware of your inner dialogue. Replace criticism with direction. Replace excuses with action. Replace fear-filled questions with empowering ones. You don't need a new personality. You need a better conversation with the one person you'll spend every moment of your life with, yourself. 3 days from now, look back and ask one simple question: do I feel more in control of my thoughts than I did before? If the answer is yes, keep going, because lasting transformation isn't built on dramatic moments. It's built on the quiet decisions nobody sees. The words you choose, the actions you repeat, and the mindset you strengthen every single day. Your future is listening. Make your next sentence count.